Hey, this is Seth Breedlove of Small Town Monsters. You are listening to my favorite podcast, the CreepGeeks Podcast. That's all I got. That's it.
So, hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm Greg.
I'm Omi.
And this is the CreepGeeks Podcast, Season 7, Episode 266.
Robots and Corporations, Gaslighting America, Gremlins, Goblins, and UFO or not UFO.
That's right. So, appreciate you tuning in, and we do appreciate our Patreon supporters for making this episode possible.
Yeah.
Bunch of fantastic people over there. We have a lot of stuff to talk about, and just so you know, we did this entire podcast, one of the best podcasts we've ever done. All 111 minutes. Actually, it was an hour, 11 minutes worth of it. Got it all done. Right? Brought it over to the computer. Omi took a picture. I think, did you put it on the internet already?
Yeah.
Misfired it, posted it, thinking, I'm going to get this done and go, you know. Guess what? Gremlins, man.
Yep.
It sounded not good.
Yeah.
I would play it for you, but it doesn't sound good. So,
But, I mean, that made me actually rewrite a whole segment into the podcast regarding equipment gremlins.
that's right.
So, yeah.
So, anyway, it is what it is. We have a lot of stuff to talk about, and there are things that you can do to help support the podcast. This is one of those necessary evils that you have to do if you'd like your podcast to grow.
So if you like the podcast and you want to help support us, give us a rating on whatever your favorite podcast platform is. You can also give us a call. Give us a call, leave a voicemail at 575-208-4025. That is a Roswell area code. Leave a message. Tell us what's up, what you think of the show suggestions, what have you. And finally, if you'd like to support us, you can support us on Patreon. We've provided a Patreon link in the show notes, along with links for everything we talk about each episode.
That's right. We have 266 episodes.
Ish.
So, there you go.
Yeah.
Nobody needs your little disclaimer, Omi.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so with renewed vigor and enthusiasm, we're going to start this episode over again.
Okay.
Yeah. So pretty much this episode is about a couple different things, as you heard from the title, which is Robots, Corporations, Gaslighting America, Gremlins, Goblins, UFOs or not UFOs, and then the additional section there.
Yeah.
Came across a little bit of a theory. It's not really a working theory per se. It's just like a, what? Is this true? It's a bunch of stuff that's hodgepodge together because I think at the end of the day, there's really nothing else I want to talk about that's even remotely interesting, I think.
I don't know. I think if you...
I'm aware of the okie doke.
Well, that's what I was going to say. If you piece all of this together, it turns into, put your tinfoil hat on, a big giant okie doke and a whole lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
A lot of finger pointing and a lot of just what exactly is going on here.
Yeah. So here's pretty much the idea. Technology is garbage and corporations are gaslighting America, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is all done by using artificial inflation and supply chain crisis, public fear of shortages, no hireable workers, robots and self-checkouts, lowered customer satisfaction, layoffs, closures, and artificially inflated property values are allowing corporations to gaslight America.
I don't know. That's a pretty strong statement.
Well, it is, because at the end of the day, you have all these companies out there reporting record profits, but they're suffering so bad, then how do you have these amazing record profits?
And is that suffering, like, define the suffering? Are you talking
I can't, because why are they laying everybody off? Why is it such a, because they act like they're suffering with the supply chain crisis and everything that's going on just like everybody else is. They're we can't hire people because they don't want to work and all these things that are being used. Now, don't get me wrong. I am a capitalist, okay?
Okay.
And I believe in doing your part and working your way into an organization and working up a little bit. I don't believe in doing it for a nickel when everything needs $1. But at the same time, I'm realistic, okay? If you're doing a job that doesn't facilitate or is worth $18 an hour, you should not get $18 an hour, because at the end of the day, when you go into work for somebody, it's a negotiation. People don't seem to want to bring that up. You don't have to accept their first offer. You're supposed to counter. It's a bargaining tactic. It's what you do. I've never made minimum wage because I've always asked for more.
So bring your worth and then anticipate what the company's justifying.
Yeah, because it's a business. Most companies that pay you are not charities.
Okay.
So if they say, we're going to pay you $8 an hour, and you go, no, sir, I'm worth $10 an hour, and you know it, and that's where I'd like to be, then you work the process. And then while you're there with the expectation of working into a position or better position or making more, then you negotiate again.
Okay.
Now, I will say, with that negotiated position, when a company hires you, they are hiring you based off your skill set that you bring to the table. It's listed on your little resume with the expectation in the job description that this is the job that we're hiring and paying you to do. Mm-hmm. Doing 15, 20 things outside of that job description with no additional money and all that stuff, I kind of have a problem with. Give you an example. I worked for a company that said, oh, hey, you know Photoshop. Can you basically train everybody how to use Photoshop? And I said, no, I went to school for that sort of thing. And I don't want to sit down and try to train somebody how to use Photoshop.
A, Photoshop wasn't specifically on your resume.
It was a 16-week freaking class.
Yeah. B, you weren't hired at that particular moment to train.
That's right. And I also had a similar conversation with the same company when they said, we want you to basically, you hear that? I hear something. See, we're all paranoid now because we had a problem with our equipment, our gear. So yeah, anyway, they said, hey, we want you to do network training for everybody and train everybody how to be a network engineer. I'm like, hey, that's not what I signed on for. That's not what you're paying me for. That's a completely different profession.
Yeah.
Where they make a whole lot more money than me. So either let's figure that out and you pay me more to basically compensate and maybe change my job title, or we just find a different way to do what you want done. And you know what happened?
What?
They found a different way to do what they wanted done. It didn't require me stepping outside of the role that I was contracted to work at pennies versus dollars.
So I would say I have a whole argument to that. However, that brings up a really good point, and that point is they found a different solution. And in this case, these companies that are reporting, especially in the media right now, all this loss and all this shrinkage, their different solution is robots. And that's...
Yeah, well, it's more than just that.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, a lot of companies and corporations are using the idea that they can't find hireable people, right, is slightly untoward. They post job postings. I don't think, it's a matter of like quiet quitting or what they're calling ghost hiring, where they post a job on the internet and just never fill the position.
Or they move somebody laterally.
Right, which is fine. They can do that because they still have to post the position. But if you never fill the position because you can't find applicants that want to work, what's the reason behind that? Because if they need people to work, why are they not actually filling those roles?
Yeah.
The companies and corporations will say, well, we're not filling those roles because we don't have anybody suitable for the position. And then the counter argument would be, well, I see you have this position listed at $20,000 less per year than anywhere else. Why are you doing that? And they're like, well, we're struggling. Yet your quarterly earnings and your annual earnings are huge. And I think part of it is that they got a lot of money from places where they would give you a lot of money during our recent episodes where we were all like made to stay in the house for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. And I think if their company situation is still dire on paper and they don't have those people, then they don't have to pay that money back because they were doing a lot of forgiveness with those loans that were given out.
Yeah.
And I think that if they showed, hey, we're doing exceedingly well, even though we have an employment crisis, the company or the government that gave them the money might want that money back. So I think it's sort of a balancing act where they're like, we want to bake it out like we can't pay people the extra money because we like money because we're a corporation. But we have to report our profits, and all of a sudden we have, these amazing, quarterly earnings and annual earnings that are like, we've exceeded our, they're making tons and tons of money, even more so than usual. And I think a lot of this opens up the door for things to slip in. Like, hey, let's create a burger flipping robot and slide that on in there. Because see, now it's okay. You wouldn't want a robot making your hamburger before when you can put a body in that position, right, to employ people and keep the economy going and all that stuff. But if you got a problem and you can't hire good people, right?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Well, we still got to make money because we still have to basically support all of our other work. So what do you slide technology in there, and it's less offensive or unpalatable.
And in areas where, people are pointing out that obvious divide there where there's for hire or hiring now signs everywhere, but nobody's hiring, yet you go look at county or city statistics and you realize X amount of people are still unemployed. In those particular areas, you'll see in the media or in the news, you'll see a lot of what seems like propaganda, where it's flipping the fault of whatever the problem is, whether it's a shortage of staff or a problem with customer service. You'll see that media flip a story where it seems like, that issue would not arise if there were a robot present. And I'm talking about a recent article, I think it hit this weekend, where it was like McDonald's and somebody running the drive-thru had an order of, and this is where it's a little vague, 80 McNuggets. And it was a frustrating experience because I guess it was a minimal staff at that particular location. So the employees there pulled together to do the 80 McNuggets. I don't know if it was 80 orders of McNuggets or just 80 McNuggets. And there was an interaction between the staff and the person at the drive-thru. The person at the drive-thru got upset and drove off, and I believe the employee quit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's an article we put in here from CNBC, which is, I'm sure, the bastion of truth if you're looking at it, where it basically says, struggling to find workers and eager to relieve staff from boring, repetitive tasks.
But the point of that story is, that story is being put out there, and you're going to take one side or the other side. One side, you're going to be like, oh, well, it wouldn't have been a frustrating experience if a robot was making the 80 McNuggets. The other side of that argument is, I would not have a frustrating experience trying to order 80 McNuggets if I had a robot doing it. So, well,
that's not what the article is trying to say, but that's the side you could take from it. They're talking about like, oh, hey, worker, we're going to make this better by having this robot flip a burger.
So,
and meanwhile, you're standing there going, man, I used to have so much fun talking to Omi while I was working flipping burgers. Now Omi's gone.
Yeah.
And there's this robot. It just, in its place.
Or I used to come in every Sunday and get this combo, and I'd make sure it had no mayonnaise on it. And I came here so often every Sunday that employee knew that's the combo I wanted.
Yeah, well, that's going away because using artificial intelligence, computer vision technology, and mechanical arm, right? Chipotle, White Castle, and Wing Zone, and some other places plans to add 100 flippy robots to their fry stations. The tide has turned. This is no longer a question of are robotics coming to the industry. It's a foregone conclusion. So I think a lot of this is propaganda to get the robots in the workplace because, once you get over the initial cost of a robot, it's free. I'm sure you got maintenance and things like that too. But, if companies could basically go completely automated, they would.
I know.
In a second, they would have no problems doing that. But they kind of want to make it okay. See, they have to make it okay for the general. They don't want to really upset their consumer base.
Yeah.
Because if you said, hey, McDonald's is going 100% robotic.
Yeah.
I don't like using self-checkout. So you think I'm going to go to a robo McDonald's? No.
No.
I want to see that angry old lady behind the counter who's tired of staying at home is like, when I'm going to McDonald's, I want to go work somewhere. I'd rather see her face than Flippy.
But you're a rarity because right now, especially in the news or social media, you have all these people having either side of the counter. You're having these horrible experiences like these employees who are working X amount of hours because the company claims they can't hire anymore. So you have somebody who's worked a 12-hour fast food shift. But then on the, again, jump over the counter, you have the customer who is like, I tried to order 80 McNuggets for a little get-together, and I had a problem.
Right. Well, and part of that should be addressed, but won't be addressed is because customers and workers together, I think, have an unrealistic expectation of a level of service they have to give and or receive, and the corporations aren't doing anything about setting the standard, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes, the customer is not always right. And on the other side of that is I can't get what I want because the workers don't care or they're not trained, and yet they want all this money. And the corporations that should be stepping in and going, your satisfaction is important to us, they don't care.
We had decades of customer satisfaction being the primary point of retail culture and transactional culture. You had to make sure the customer was satisfied with what it was.
Now it seems like that's no longer an issue.
So now our companies and corporations, whether we're talking about a grocery store, fast food, or even a place where you buy clothes or electronics, are we just writing off customer service because the demand is there, and no matter what, the consequences after the fact or the receiving the product or the end experience is negligent?
I think at the end of the day, the expectations overall are going to be so completely low that what bother is it to complain about poor service when nothing's going to happen to get it fixed? And the companies don't really seem to care. They only care when the media finds out and then puts that little thing out there, or if a public becomes aware of an issue through like a regular person or whatever. So why worry about it? They don't care. And since they don't care, and it's such a low factor in their basically operating budgets or even their operating agenda, it's not an issue anymore. And besides, why even worry about it when you can have an AI intercept your angry, experience as a customer? An AI, a chat robot, can answer all your questions and make things better. At the end of the day, you get a coupon and you feel like you've been heard because AI is slipping in there too. And why are these huge companies and corporations that are out there right now laying off all these people? What's the point? I think the idea that you're adding robots along with AI algorithms and stuff and the way the workplace is being set up these days, a lot of the things that are repetitive tasks or just basically tasks that need a slight bit of intervention maybe in the process are being done by AI.
So AI and robots are taking over what used to be lower income to middle class jobs.
No, it's going all the way throughout. You can replace, think about it. If you had a person whose job was to make sure that 17 stores had the correct things ordered and shipped to be available on time, right? Mm-hmm. For supply and demand and all that other stuff, to make sure that they got their product, like McDonald's. McDonald's doesn't grow their own stuff in every individual store. They got to get it from somewhere, like a warehouse.
Okay.
Now, if you can create a computer program or an AI that knows and can predict the trend of how much a store is going to sell, this goes for any store, Walmart, whatever, and knows that during these peak times, based off empirical data that I've received and all these like millions of data points, I know that they're going to run out of fries or collared polo shirts in the spring because it's time for school to start. So let me go ahead and just pre-order that stuff. And since basically inventory can be instantaneous when they basically go through the cash register and it says, oh, I removed one polo shirt from the store, let's immediately order another, right? You don't need a person to basically order that stuff. It's done automatically. So you eliminate somebody's position. Same thing with healthcare. Oh, in this area, these people get kidney disease more often than not. So we know that with this is how much we can charge. This is how much should be charged. Let's go ahead and set our structure here so that when we try to get when we try to get the money from the hospital or whatever for the services rendered, we know that this is what we're going to charge, what we're going to pay. You don't even need a person for that. So a lot of stuff that would require a phone call or a person going, oh, let me fill this blank out, is going away. I mean, think about it. Even I think Google laid off part of their AI team because the AI can do their job.
That's true.
So, and we're talking AI, not like some one big computer that's like, I will rule the planet. AI is an algorithm, man. It's a program. You can have sub-programs and subsets of programs.
Well, I mean, you're just talking about like ordering, like order X amount of collard greens, order X amount of shirts. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, that used to be a whole position at a hospital I worked at.
That was a whole position at Walmart. You've seen the people run around with the little guns?
Inventory specialist and purchasing admin, because it got labeled different things when they were trying to hire a human for it. Right.
But we used to call it, like on the ship, we call it, when I was in the Navy, we called it supply guy.
Yeah.
Go down to supply, and they would say, we've used this, we need to pre-order and do all that. They can predict all that.
If you can write a program to replace your inventory specialist, I mean...
Yeah, and you got companies like IBM that will basically sell you a program that it predicts when you're going to run into problems and help fix it. At 2 o'clock in the morning when the human's asleep. Well, if they can do it at 2 o'clock in the morning when the human's asleep, why do we need a human?
Yeah.
And this is part of the thing. This is what's happening. And I think that there has to be enough sort of diversionary things going on so that people don't get angry about the situation and bring it out to the surface. Because if nobody knows they're putting like over 100 Flippy McFlippy things right? Mm-hmm. In Chipotle and places like that, you're not even going to say anything because you're not going to care. And there will be people who be like, I got my hamburger made by a robot. That's great. Meanwhile, you're at home going, hey, I had 40 hours. Now I got 19 hours. Why do I only have 19 hours anymore?
Yeah, and we have a store just up the street from us that's very good at that right now.
Yeah. Well, it's happening all over the place. And, hey, we can't hire people because, A, we're not going to offer enough money just to make sure they don't want to work there.
Yeah.
And, B, we have an expectation that we want you to do more because the whole, we expect you to do more in your job than you've actually contracted to do. Because when you go and you sit down and you get interviewed in a job, it's contract, man. I agree to give you these services because I think I match what you're looking for, and you agree to accept my services for this amount of money. Right? Mm-hmm. And everything's a negotiation in the business world. Oh, so you want me to do other things that are outside of my job description? Or basically I need to be on call 24 hours a day or whatever, then you need to make sure I'm compensated. And a lot of companies aren't doing a compensatory thing. And a lot of companies have garbage managers that don't know. Okay, if you put me on call 24 hours a day, and Gary, you got to answer the phone, Gary.
Yeah.
No matter what, and be here within 20 minutes, then you got to pay me based off a 24-hour clock. And, a lot of this stuff, and they say, oh, well, it's a right to work state. That doesn't excuse anything. There are labor laws that are in place. And I am, like I said, I am a capitalist. I'm also not one that is a charity. And I think that, there needs to be realistic expectations set in somebody's job.
I mean, unlike the podcast that we just tried to record and had problems with, there's a flip side to that. You have been speaking a lot from the employee corporation perspective, and I'm still stuck here with the whole consumer, the end user perspective, which is, okay, you have these people who are being hired in and asked to do more than was agreed upon on their contract. These people are afraid for their jobs because there's all these layoffs, or they might get replaced by a robot. But at the end of it, at the far end of it, you have the consumer who needs the product or needs food or needs whatever. And they're settling for this lowered expectation of customer service or no customer service. And there's supply shortages, or there's a fuel crisis, or all this other stuff that just leads you down further and further in your expectation for your final product, that you're just, at the end of it, you're happy you got what you got, whether it's a hamburger.
Yeah. And that goes into the same thing with a job. You just be happy you have a job.
Yeah, whether it's a hamburger or a carton of eggs or a new pair of headphones.
And see, and part of this is that, the inflation thing, if once you have a problem with like inflationary products, let's say like gas got crazy expensive.
Yeah.
Now it's okay for any company, corporation, business, whatever, to say, well, due to this rising cost, I need to increase my cost. And then the other guy's like, well, wait a minute. If you're going to raise your cost, then I have to raise my cost. And everybody can raise their stuff because everybody else is doing it. It's like a ripple in a pond, right? Yeah. And so when all these costs get raised, your eggs go to $6 a dozen. And then shockingly, grocery stores, companies, corporations in general are reporting record earnings.
Yeah.
Well, how are they doing that? Because nobody basically caps how much can be, how much things can get raised. Now, a lot of stores and companies do. Yeah. Like some grocery stores will cap it at like 15%. Like they can't charge any more than 15% of whatever they get it at. Well, if a grocery store now all of a sudden has to pay, say, $5 for a dozen eggs, and they can only raise it 15%, they're going to raise it 15% because now the eggs that they used to get for $1 are now $5. And I think there needs to be really, people need to get mad and be really vocal about it and start really saying it, because once the attention gets out there and it becomes a thing, and more and more people start to see it and shout it, then companies have to go, ooh, we need to kind of back off a little bit, man, because, they're going to stop buying our stuff. Because that's the good thing about companies in America.
Yeah.
For every company that sells one thing, there's 5 more that sell something else. And there are companies out there like, you know what? I make organic egg products and sell organic egg products, and I was charging $5 before, and I'm fine. I'll just raise mine to $7. And that way I'll have a steady sell. I'll still be able to afford the eggs and everything involved and get a little bit of money. And then when you see Walmart eggs, for example, and I'm not saying Walmart has $9 eggs, like Walmart brand eggs for $9, and here's organics, super grass-fed best whatever version for $6, what are you going to do? You're going to buy the cheaper ones.
Yeah.
And that's how some companies go through, and they really shore up their coffers going, I can still do it. I might not make as much as everybody, but I'm going to be.
That goes back to this whole egg crisis, because I just had that conversation with a friend and their wife, because it was like their wife wants them to buy the fancy organic eggs. Well, they had to go to Walmart, and the fancy super cardboard box but organic free range blah 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 eggs were $6.36. But then right next to them is the Walmart eggs, and they're $6.88.
Yeah, exactly. What are you going to do?
So this time, it was okay to spend the money on the organic fair trade eggs because they were actually 50 cents less.
Right. And so if you look at supply and demand,
yeah,
in general as a customer, I'm sure that there is a larger percentage of customers who are buying the Walmart brand because they can't afford the organic brand.
Yeah. But now the organic brand is like the same price or a few cents cheaper.
Right. It's almost like there's a collusion going on with all these suppliers out there to keep the prices up so that they keep making more money. And then the product manufacturers or suppliers that supply the actual product, they have to kick it up to keep maintaining the prices. And at the end of the day, they're all making these record profits. And the only person that really hurts is the customer. But everybody that works anywhere is a customer somewhere. Yeah. I mean, hey, when you leave the office, now you're no longer the egg guy. Now you're, oh, me, I have to get some food at Walmart or wherever it's convenient, whatever you want to do. I'm not going to judge you because even Target does this stuff
and
too.
Even the grocery stores, they're technically a customer. They have to buy these eggs from someplace.
Yeah, I mean,
and
we're
But the collusive scheme that you mentioned, that's what I find amazing with this article that you put in this podcast episode, because it's like, this is coming from CNBC.
Yeah, it's under the personal finance section where it says egg prices rose 60% in 2022. One farm group claims it's a collusive scheme by suppliers. So just in case you're Walmart or Target or anybody and you're out there listening to us, we didn't come up with this. This is out there.
Yeah.
And everything we're saying is an opinion.
By CNBC, they wrote this article.
Well, look at the picture.
Yeah.
Our suppliers have increased their prices on eggs, which is causing higher prices for our customers.
Gosh.
And so if they all get together and say, hey, guys, let's keep this gravy train rolling.
And look right there on the picture. Okay, the super fancy eggs are in the plastic case, not the cardboard one.
You mean styrofoam?
Yeah. Well, styrofoam's to the right, cardboard's to the left,
yeah.
And then the plastic ones. So the plastic organics.
Oh, yeah, the see-through. I never look up there. Yeah. Those are too expensive.
So those are $6.99 in this picture. I don't know where this picture was taken. And then in the corner, you look at the cheap eggs, and it says, I think that says $6.39 and $6.89.
Yes.
So it's only 10 cents more to buy the fancy eggs.
Well, they all got to get together and make sure they don't swing their prices too far, so that way everybody can get a piece of the pie.
But like I said, our local Walmart, the fancy eggs right now are cheaper.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm like,
and I was a product of the 70s.
Yeah.
And I lived through the first really remembering things. Was in the 70s. I was a little kid.
Yeah. And
I'm sitting there with my dad in long gas lines. He's like, "You want to go get some gas?" I knew we'd be gone an hour.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And we'd sit there, and when gas used to be like 36 cents, and all of a sudden it's like 89 cents. That's a big jump.
We sound old. We sound like, I remember when milk was a nickel,
Well, it's all about supply and demand. And and honestly, our gas prices and the way our gas shortage became impacted was when we actually joined the oil producing exporting countries, OPEC, and started buying their gas.
Yeah.
And some people are going to say, well, and granted, I was really young and I didn't know all the ins and outs and details. All I know is that it went from being, we had plenty of gas and everything was great, to now we're paying more and all of a sudden there's shortages. And what happened in that short period of time that all of a sudden we had no gas? We had no oil, no crude, barrel price. Nothing stopped.
Yeah.
We didn't all of a sudden magically run out of gas or oil. And we didn't run out of eggs like what's happening now. We're not running out of stuff. So
now an economist is going to stop you right there and claim things like, well, when we joined OPEC, there were new processes to put in place.
And I'm going to say, why did we join OPEC at all?
Yeah.
Because as we're finding out, right, gasoline is not created from dinosaurs, is what we were taught in school. You know that? We were taught that in school. Dinosaurs, when they were dead and decomposed, they basically turned into petrochemicals.
I got told plant matter.
Yeah, it's all a lie.
Okay.
Because think about, and here's how I look at it. And I may be wrong. I don't care, right? You ever burn a candle? Mm-hmm. And you ever see some of the stuff that's swirling around in the candle wax?
Yeah.
You picture the earth with a core that may or may not be magma, because we really don't know what it is, and heating things up and spinning around this big ball of lead, magma, nickel, whatever you want to call it. It creates a byproduct. And I think that byproduct, over millions of years, not just, the dinosaurs, because I'm pretty sure dinosaurs, anyway, is oil. So are we ever going to run out? I don't think so. I mean, we have more oil reserves under Texas than all of Saudi Arabia, period. So I just think a lot of this is orchestrated.
Well, yeah, and the orchestration of what I am feeling is like deceptive right now, especially with this whole egg gate. Egg producers and food economists are suggesting a deadly outbreak of bird flu has compounded into a significant supply problem at a time of peak demand and higher costs for feed and transportation. Now, this is on this article, but I'm assuming, like us, y'all are using TikTok or Facebook, and you're seeing these people talk about the other reasons. I remember when the egg prices first started climbing in December, and the excuse was, it's negative 20 degrees in Iowa. And I'm like, that's great that it's not negative 20 in Iowa and those chickens can't produce eggs. But I used to live in Virginia, and the entire peninsula of the Chesapeake Bay is pretty much all Purdue. It's all a chicken factory.
Yeah.
So what about it's not negative 20 in Virginia?
Well, my argument is that it's been negative 20 in Iowa and other places all throughout history. So what's different now, all of a sudden in 2022?
So now instead of saying, oh, it's the cold, now they're saying it's a bird flu outbreak and a supply chain problem and all these other things. And we've seen some stuff from some other people that are suggesting, hey, that feed that you've been feeding your chickens.
Well, those are like the local growers and stuff like that, where it's like, I've seen it. I know what you're talking about. It's like, hey, I haven't seen an egg in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
I stopped giving my chicken feed, commercially bought chicken feed, and giving them something else, and now they're growing eggs. Or growing and laying eggs all of a sudden. So what's different?
I've got more eggs than I've had in like months.
Yeah, I've fed my chickens goat feed, and now they're magically dropping eggs all over the place.
Table scraps or what have you.
Eventually, it's going to have to stop, because is this really economics or profiteering? It's like, okay,
it's being suggested out there that this is being engineered. I mean, what if there truly is an egg shortage, but it's relating to something with the feed?
Well, I think it's going to tap out when you go into like Tractor Supply, that last year had like 400 or 500 chickens running around that you could buy for $1.97. They're going to be $20.
Yeah. So
and it goes to everything else. Like, oh well, we're going to be short on flour because we're not getting our flour from the Ukraine. And it's like, well, then why were we paying farmers? To destroy their own crops? Like, and this is not just something we're making up. There's people saying, "Yep, here we go. If I don't burn these crops, I lose my subsidies from the government."
Yeah.
So grow it. You have to grow it, and then you had to put it in a pile and burn it.
Yeah.
And they were saying, and one guy basically said, I know my grain goes in with other grain and goes to places like Russia and Ukraine and, European countries, other European countries.
Yeah.
And he says, I've been doing this for years. This is where it goes. Now I've been told to grow it and burn it.
Yeah.
And now we hear, oh, well, we're going to be short on flour and grain and things like that because we get that from the Ukraine, and they're not doing it because they're having a little bit of a conflict right now. So why don't we grow our own stuff?
We do still grow it. It's just we're not processing it here.
Well, we're growing it and burning it. I mean, think about all the tonnage of all this stuff that's going to waste. I just think that there's just weird stuff going on where we're just sitting here.
The late 90s and the early 2000s, it was cheaper to send that grain or dog food components overseas to a different country and have it processed there. And now that there's so much turmoil in the world. Now we can't even afford to ship it there, so the farmers are setting it on fire.
Oh, why can't we?
Yeah,
they were being told to do that, and why can't we ship stuff anywhere? Because gas prices are so high.
Why can't we manufacture it here? Oh, because in the late 90s or mid 90s, early 2000s, we made all the processing companies move overseas.
Well, we didn't make them move overseas. Yeah. They left.
Yeah, they left.
Because they said, well, you mean I can move overseas and not pay these taxes and pay people like nothing?
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
And, some people listen to getting all angry. They'll be like, well, I can't believe it. Hey, Apple's not headquartered out of the U.S.
Yeah.
Where do they pay their taxes?
Oh, but
they're overseas. I think they're in Ireland.
That's a technology company.
It doesn't matter. It's still the same thing. They're making it excessively difficult to basically supply and feed our own country. And, everything else is exciting. It just seems like there's just one thing after another, and there's enough diversionary tactics and forest fires going on. We're not supposed to be paying attention. And if you're like us, we like paranormal and ghosts and UFOs and stuff like that, guess what?
What?
Hey, let's not pay attention to anything that's going on with eggs and stuff like that, because there's a whole bunch of UFO sightings just coming out of nowhere, boy. Check them out. Spheres flying everywhere. Even the Russians shot one down. It's like there was enough diversionary tactics for everyone. What's your favorite thing? Pizza? Flour shortage. No pizza for you.
Oh, okay.
You want to raise your own chickens because you're tired of paying $6 in supply and all. You don't be a part of that. $20 a chicken for you.
Or $40.
And while you're there,
feed.
buy some chicken feed that makes sure that you don't lay eggs.
Yeah.
So that way you're like, man, I might as well just buy them at $6. What? A chicken costs $20? I can get a dozen for $6? That's cheap.
And you still have to feed them antibiotics and
well, you got to take care of them. They have stuff you put in their water, and you're like, well, that's cheap compared to that. And now you're happy paying $6 a dozen for eggs. I remember when gas it was like $5 a gallon. I'm glad it's only $3 a gallon. It was $1.89 not even like 3 years ago. And then when it got super high, it was $2.89. We took a trip in 2021. We drove across country. It was $2.89 when we left. No, $2.39 when we left. Mm-hmm. The average, $2.89, even hitting into some of those areas where gas and was expensive just because of location and things like that. The most we paid, and I remember being mad about it, was $5.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's because they got us. They're like, there's no more gas for like 75 miles. I'm like, well, I'm not a sucker. And I don't want to be inconvenienced, so I filled up. And then like 5 miles down the road, what was there? Gas. $3.89. I was incensed. It's like, screw you, Marfa, Texas. Right? Now people are happy paying less than $4 a gallon in gas.
Yeah.
Do you think they're actually ever going to drop those prices back down to $2.89 or 39 cents?
Well, probably
continually?
Right before the election.
Yeah. But you'll be happy because, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And this is what they do.
But
it's all part of this. It's all part of the thing. And it seems like they're doing a whole lot now. So it's really getting on people's radars. It's like my bullshit meter is just pegging all over the place.
And that goes back to the UFOs you were mentioning. They're doing a whole lot now. I mean, it's
spheres everywhere.
I mean, we're seeing UFO reports on mainstream news websites.
Oh yeah, everybody can see them. Go to like somewhere like TikTok and type UFO sphere.
Well,
You'll find a million
mentioning
of them.
the more legit or allegedly legit.
Okay, first
places.
off, how dare you say that TikTok is not legit?
But I mean, you can go right now. Russia shoots down ball UFO after spotting mystery object in the sky.
Yeah,
and it's like right there on the mirror. They're talking about a small size object in the shape of a ball, much like a UFO, has been destroyed. And I'm like, okay, well, why are you reporting this? It just sounds like they took down some sort of strange spherical aerial phenomenon.
Which is a UFO, Omi.
I know. Or UAP, It doesn't sound like, but I read the headline and I'm like, oh, well, did they shoot it down and get like alien survivors?
It's funny. I'm getting to the point almost where if it ain't a saucer, I don't care.
I know, right?
And that's wrong because it's more than likely just regular. I mean,
what if it's a triangle? Do you still care?
It could be, okay, if it's a triangle, who's to say it's not just one of the regular black triangles that's being reported, which is actually supposed to be the TR-37B?
That's true. I'd still care.
I think a lot of stuff is technology. And I do think that there's alternative propulsions involved because, the U.S. Navy's been filing patents for it. So why would they just file a patent for it if it didn't exist?
But
I mean, you can do that. You can file a patent for future technologies and stuff like that. I think it kind of is what it is, and I think there's enough diversionary tactics going on when it comes to UFOs that if there actually is a full disclosure, nobody's really going to care.
Yeah, or it's going to be, again, so saturated in media that you're just like, you can't find the stuff that you should care about.
It's all garbage, right?
I mean,
and I really hope that we actually come across some UFO footage like we have to go, whoa.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that is.
I mean, we thought we saw a UFO recently, so.
Yeah. I mean, it had all the attributes of a UFO. It basically hovered for a long period of time, had multiple colors, right? Things were flying in and around it, so we know that it was at a great distance, all that stuff. And at the end, we kind of figured out it might just be Venus. But it didn't look like anything we've ever seen. I'm like, what is that? We know what's in that sky over there, and it was nothing. And then people are like, oh, well, Starlink launches, and we know about Starlink when it launches, and we know that anytime you see like 3 or 4 things in a row, chances are it's Starlink. But this was just sitting there.
Because I told you, like, a week ago, I had thought I spotted more Starlink being put up, you know?
Well, yeah.
But I know how to identify Starlink. You look for that strip of lights, you know?
Yeah.
And this was hanging low in the sky and seemed to be very close.
Yeah.
But allegedly, it's Venus.
Maybe? I mean, yeah, that's supposed to be like, it's the brightest you'll ever see it kind of a thing.
Do we post it or do we share it with
No,
people?
we don't post it. That'd be like us posting pictures of like 5 or 6 satellites in a row and going, what is this? It's UFOs flying in formation. It's like, no, that's Starlink taking its time to get up in the air to maybe give me better service, right?
Yeah.
It makes you kind of scramble around. It's just kind of a thing. And look at these, like one of the articles we posted, because we talk about technology, right? And technology-driven companies, right? Mm-hmm. Laying people off. Why are they laying people off? And we think, well, you know, who knows? But I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but I think a lot of it is that their jobs are being able to be done by something else, right? And they have to show they're hurting a little bit, even though they're making record profits. And it's okay. It's okay for a company to make money. Don't get me wrong, man. I'm a capitalist, and I like the idea of companies being able to support their endeavors along with the people that work for them. And hopefully they're being justly compensated. But why are people being let go? Right? And then like Google had a company-wide layoff, and there were companies, of course, that are turned around to, I just lost my train of thought. Thank you very much. Oh. But they're letting people go, and they're in these positions, and you know, of course, it happens, right, where people go to log in, and they can't even log in. Because they just turned off their access because they're being fired. But why are companies firing? There's no real good reason for it. I mean, like Alphabet, which is the Google company that owns everything, laid off, 12,000 people? Mm-hmm. 6% of their full-time workforce. And they're not the only company to do that. You got Microsoft laying people off. You know, cryptocurrency went bad. It's crazy. And Omi handed me a thing. It basically said, hey, refresh your screen because evidently I have missed something. What did I miss? This is the part where you start talking.
Equipment gremlins.
Yes, because I don't know what you put in there exactly because I refreshed my screen and there it is. Oh, yeah. I thought we talked about gremlins.
No, we haven't talked at all about it.
Okay.
So instead of like us, like a dog that can't put a bone away about unemployment and layoffs and stuff, let's talk about gremlins.
You mean the ones that have been created since 2020 through 2022 in new car manufacturing?
No, I'm actually going all the way back to World War II.
Well, yeah.
Yes, because as the 14 term of the day, Wikipedia calls gremlins, a gremlin is a mischievous folkloric creature invented at the beginning of the 20th century to originally explain malfunctions in aircraft, and later in other machinery, processes, and their operators. Depictions of these creatures vary widely, stories about them and references to them as the causes, especially inexplicable technical and mental problems of pilots, were especially popular during and after World War II.
Mental problems.
Yeah.
I don't think that's fair.
Now, going back to possibly robots replacing people in companies and restaurants, I mean, could you imagine a gremlin running loose Gremlin, the supernatural paranormal phenomenon, running loose in some of these companies?
Well, allegedly, according to Linda Moulton Howe, there was like a Japanese company that had a problem with a AI robot going crazy and just blasting like 70 people or something like that.
Oh
and yeah, they had to lock everything down. So what gremlin got in there?
A Kadama, if we're going by Japanese folklore.
Maybe. Or it's just doesn't care and has no ethics put into it, like we talked about in our previous podcast. But I mean, yeah, the Gremlins things have been acting up because when we actually talked about this, because our podcast got zapped and sounded really terrible.
So yeah, so if this sounds like we're rehashing stuff, that's probably because we are.
Yeah, but I noticed that last week, over the past 2 weeks, that I've just seen where there's been a lot of weird issues just in general with like stuff like my phone and, you know, our internet connection.
I had to temporarily switch part of last week from being a social media manager to being tech support for people.
Yeah.
I mean, it got bad. And then,
but it wasn't just you and it wasn't just me. It was other people, you know, putting it on the internet. I've been having weird problems. Are you having weird problems? So it's just weird, man. And then, not saying that that's being caused by artificial inflation, but what if it is? If everything is an AI and everything is listening?
Well,
think about it.
I don't think it's AI. And I also don't think it's what a lot of people are saying right now, which is it's Mercury leaving retrograde.
Yeah. Saturn's in Gatorade.
So allegedly, since Mercury is slowly leaving its retrograde status, people are reporting technical and mechanical issues. I've seen a couple of articles trying to say this. And they're stating that as it leaves its retrograde, it's going to culminate in even more technical and mechanical failures.
Right.
With everything coming to a head before Mercury leaves retrograde completely and smooths out. And that is the CreepGeeks astrology observation of the month, because I don't really fall for that belief or fall into that belief.
I mean, who knows?
I'm more apt to believe it's Gremlins, maybe. I mean,
you know, if you're going to believe in Gremlins, though, you can't point the finger at it not being
Mercury in retrograde,
astronomy or astrology or whatever it is. I mean, who knows?
Burrito and microwave. I mean,
yeah.
Granted, we have, like Greg was saying, lots of phone issues. Like, stuff has been happening around here. Our audio equipment acted up after a perfect podcast episode, so that's why we're re-recording now. My trail cameras are acting up. I've had to take all 3 of them down, try to fix them up, and something's going on. We've had some weird stuff happening.
Yeah, so if you've had weird stuff, let us know. I mean, if you had like weird stuff happen to you, you know, like let us know.
Yeah.
So,
but
I don't know. It's a strange time. Maybe, and probably that's part of it too. You have a bunch of weird stuff happening. You start scrutinizing things, trying to figure out what's going on. But
yeah, I mean, and since we live in Western North Carolina, a part of Appalachia, I'm like, is it Tommy knockers?
I don't think so. I think society is just going through. Would you say we're in Great Gatorade?
Burrito in the microwave?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows, man? Everything's weird. Everything's crazy.
Yeah.
Just sort of it is what it is, but what are you going to do? So I don't know. And top that off, we've been like kind of looking and watching some like murder shows, which is something I don't normally watch, but we've seen one on national parks. It's called like Murder in the Wild, I think. It's on Hulu, you know, so if you've seen like, oh, that show's old, it's not old to us. Right, where they talk about a serial killer, possible. Anyway,
Wild Crime,
that's it. And they had talked about a serial killer that was in and around the Blue Ridge Parkway. In our past 3 or 4 podcast episodes, we've been talking about weird stuff happening in and around the Blue Ridge Parkway.
Yeah.
So, and we even have one of our patrons out there doing some research and popping stuff on Reddit.
Yeah. And
kind of putting it out there. And you know who you are, very much appreciated. So I don't know. We might be getting some news about some different things. And with the whole UFO thing, I'm not surprised that people are seeing things.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping to be able to see more. So if you're a patron and you've reached out to us, you know who you are. Please check your stuff. We need to make a phone call.
Yeah.
And see what's going on. We're not going to say anything about anything at all, but all I know is that the podcast is something that we like to do.
Yeah.
And this was just sort of a weird happenstance where like things are starting to click in strange ways. So what's the next crisis going to be? Who knows? I think a lot of this is a diversionary tactic. I was thinking that we should include in our podcast the idea that UFO and UFO people, whoever they are or whatever they are protecting the Earth against comets and weird things like that to coincide with the green comet meteor thing that you were talking about, where it was like magically coming down and going to take out something. right? Like it was huge, but evidently something flew in there and like blew it up or something like that. Yeah, and it broke apart.
Intercepted.
Yeah, it's like, what?
But I have a hard time with the whole guardian angel alien theories. I really, really have a hard time with
it. Makes sense if they're time travelers, because then you kind of don't want to like have, Peru get wiped off the map and destroy the planet if you want to have a future.
But I also feel that planet Earth is so insignificant compared to the billions and billions of star systems and galaxies and all that out there, that why would just some aliens, benevolent aliens, take the time out of their day to save us from a asteroid?
Because maybe it's their planet. Maybe Earth doesn't belong to us.
It's on loan.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, I seen that clip when Klaatu was like, your planet. It was Keanu Reeves,
No.
It was a movie. I can't think of what it's called now. It went right out of my head. I shouldn't have said Keanu Reeves, but, well, and they were like, golly, that's going to bite. So if you know what movie I'm talking about, where Klaatu and they come down and basically warns the planet, hey, you better do better. Hey, the Earth stood still.
Yeah,
I think.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, you guys better do better. And it's like, well, how are you coming to our planet? It's like, your planet? Like, how dare you? It doesn't belong to you.
Yeah.
Which would be funny. What if somebody showed up? So you guys have been squatting here long enough. Right.
Well, luckily, we passed so many squatting laws here in the United States.
And they're like, hey, you can't make up your own laws. We're a United Federation of Planets. We don't listen to your laws.
That's what I wanted to talk about. So with everybody's shift in mentality, like letting robots take over certain tasks and full-on jobs that used to require a human body to fill them. I mean, we've been kind of negative Nancy on some of this. Like, is there some nefarious, like, underlying reason this is happening? There's going to be some optimists out there who are like, oh, this is great. Now that there's not a person filling that role in a robot, that helps us move that person into, and that person in our society move into that utopia of like a Star Trek society where everybody goes to school and explores the stars.
Yeah, and they don't need to eat.
That's true.
I mean, the whole idea that you can have a utopia like that only works is if there is no value, like currency type value. If everything is free and you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Do you think you're going to have utopia?
No.
Not until you genetically engineer violence or, uncontrollable violence out of offenders and everything else. Because if you can do whatever you want, I think we'd spend 150 years like the Purge.
But doesn't that's also addressed in like Star Trek? So
yeah, well, remember that all happened over hundreds of years after they had like World War III and wiped out most of the planet, and they had to come together.
Yeah,
and then they're like, everything sucks because of everything, and if we take away the things that caused the issue in the first place, then we'll get better. But then they also had like genetic wars where they genetically human people and all that fighting, and so hey man, they had like 1,000 years of stuff. Yeah, okay, so you had like World War III, and then you also had, set up to where they outlawed DNA enhancement and genetic engineering because they were creating super races of people, and they thought they were going to take over the planet.
Like
and the next thing you know, Khan.
Yeah.
Right? And they shipped them off. Remember?
Yeah.
So I don't think anything like that is going to be able to be,
But there are going to be
available to
people
us
who genuinely think that robots taking over lesser positions, and I mean no disrespect by that, but automating positions and eggs costing $6.88, there's going to be people out there that think that's going to move us towards that Star Trek utopia.
Right, and those people are wrong because it doesn't fix the actual issue.
I mean,
the actual issue is not commerce and it's not money.
I'm not going to call people wrong. I'll say it's idealistic.
Well, it can be idealistic, but I think it's actually unrealistic. I think that there's a lot of expectations on every side that are unrealistic. And there has to be some kind of mutual understanding.
So is that our problem? Is that we as a society are being unrealistic and that the past 3 years hasn't taught us anything? Or,
no, because you're putting it off on me.
No.
I mean me as in just a consumer, customer, regular person, when that's not how this works.
Okay.
Because you have to look at what's actually keeping the change from occurring and happening. So you start to look at like who benefits from like laws and things like that. And you need to really start looking at, I'm not an anti-government guy, but I think it really is something that should be looked at.
Yeah.
I think if you take away the value of being a politician, right, then you're going to basically, hopefully, get people that have idealistic, basically have a better
ideology.
Yeah, there you go, ideology. And it shouldn't be like, oh man, once you become a senator for 2 terms, you got a free ride for everything for life. But no, and lobbying and things like that.
Yeah,
I think there should be limits to all that sort of thing. But at the same time, you have to be able to play with other countries and other things as well. And so, I mean, until you can figure out, how to put people with better virtue in positions to be able to make changes and choices and be willing to say, hey, look, if we implement these changes, we're not going to be able to interact with all these other countries out there that are expecting, monies and stuff like that. You kind of have to set the expectation. Hey, look, this is what we're doing. So
you're talking about setting expectations at a global level, but also at the American level.
Whether people like it or not, the U.S. is the world's police force.
But we're talking about expectations as far as like work culture and
it's all related. You can't separate it because it's a problem of scale.
So if we put better people in place to set that expectation, that's the goal, is put better people in place to create a more realistic expectation and a more realistic return. And we're talking in reference to the government, corporations, consumerism, things like that. Getting eggs that aren't $6.88 but are still worth every penny.
Remember, real change starts at the top.
But we've been complaining about that same issue, putting people in place that are worthwhile in the paranormal community. Because, I mean, we've had 3 episodes here where we have trashed, like, what's on TV lately.
Right.
We're not putting people in place to make these changes, whether it's the government or stores or the paranormal. I mean,
right.
Everything's trash.
No, everything is garbage.
Okay.
But it's that way with any organization that you have, right? So what's the intrinsic value?
The intrinsic value is setting a better standard. So, like you had talked earlier, and this was on, of course, the other podcast, about all these UFO and meteor and light ball clips or ghost man walking his dog on these crappy like security cameras that work at 14 frames per second.
Yeah, if you're lucky, we have them. So it's not like we're like.
I mean, if that's the standard that's being set out there, and we're being inundated with it, but we're unhappy with the result because we're like, oh, that's not worth it, then we should be putting evidence and people in place to say, no, here's some good UFO footage. No, here's some good questionable Bigfoot footage. And we're not getting that. And we're also getting...
No, and we're not going to. Because what happens when you flood the market with something like this? Like all these TV shows and stuff like that, and you flood the market and you're like, with this sensationalistic video clips and stuff like that, then the expectation is this. And then when you show up going, see that? And people are like, see what? It's not sensational enough to me. So I don't care. It's like, hey, let's take the scientific method and put it out in the field for investigation and stuff like that. That's boring. It's completely boring. It's boring to me. It's and that's the way it should be done, though, because that's how you get the correct data. Because at the end of the day, until there actually is some kind of like tangible, hands-on proof that everyone can see, then everything is speculation.
So whether it's good UFO footage or $6 eggs, doing the right thing is boring.
It is to everybody else, yeah. I mean, you really got to have heart for it, everything.
So disheartened, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, who makes it that way?
We, the consumer.
Everybody does, because the expectations are askew, right? You have a lowered expectation of customer service and satisfaction and the quality of whatever you'll accept. And when you're on the other side of that, right, when you're the other side of that, trying to sell that to consumers, for example, then you have to basically put it out there. It's like you hate it, but you have to sell your soul to get it. There's really no winning this sort of thing. But I think if we put some integrity back to things and make things mean things, then maybe a change will happen. But I think a lot of that the attitude has to change from the top, because if you're sitting on the top, you don't care about what's going on at the bottom.
Yeah.
So if we can make change at the top, then everything will be cool. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It's all really a problem of scale. But if enough people on the bottom, because pyramids are always, bigger on it, because it's all a pyramid scheme, right?
Okay.
Everything's pyramid scheme.
Yeah.
If enough people on the bottom start raising a ruckus, then eventually changes will work their way up to the top.
Well, a tiny example of that is there's a very large Instagram account out there right now trying to pawn off these images as a UFO and alien close encounter in like England, like way back like 1800s or something like that, right? And they're trying to pawn these off, and me and several other people are like, these are clearly Mid-Journey AI art that Mid-Journey released themselves in November.
Right.
But you are a big giant account, and you're just putting these out here trying to pass them off as a UFO encounter, close encounter.
Well, what's their actual intention?
Likes and clicks.
Okay.
Because
so they don't care.
That is getting 17,000 likes at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
But then...
So they don't care. I mean, to be completely honest, 100%, if I was getting 17 likes off posts like that, I would do it. Everybody would do it.
But then somebody who has like a legit
Because
UFO
what is their goal,
picture,
though? I mean, think about it, though. If you're putting stuff out there and you're getting 17,000 clicks, what is your actual goal? Is it to prove Bigfoots? No. You're doing the same sensationalistic crap that everybody else wants to do on these TV shows. So maybe that's not their goal, is to prove anything at all, but just to keep getting the clicks and stuff because they like what it brings them, the monetization or whatever it is.
But there's somebody out there with like, also at 3 a.m. with like a legitimate UFO picture that I probably would love to see.
Yeah, well, what's their goal?
They want to show their UFO picture to more people. Sure.
And then what happens when 17,000 people see it every time they make a post?
But they're not going to see it because that person's buried under this person who.
Well, think about it. For every amazing researcher out there, right, full of integrity and virtue, there is like a million other people that don't care. They just want the clicks and stuff, and they don't care how it gets there. And for every people, every company, corporation, entity, whatever presence out there that wants those 100,000 clicks. 17,000 clicks, there's 100 more just like it that don't care and will steal their content and post it as well, and they'll get 17,000 clicks. Yeah. Because at the end of anything like this, it's buyer beware. And you basically saying, hey, this was already done somewhere else. How dare you? They're like, I don't care because I'm not going to read your comment because I'm happy getting clicks and I'm trying to keep doing the same thing.
How dare you misrepresent this?
Yeah. And it's the internet.
How dare you provide me with an inferior product?
I don't care. You know why?
You already got my click.
And 100,000 people are going to keep buying these shoes with the wrong tag label in them for size. And, maybe I'll have 1% return them. And if that 1% returns them, I'll take care of that. But the rest of it, I got 99% that don't care. So I don't either.
You already got my click. You already got my like. You already got my money.
That's right. It doesn't matter. You keep buying the same shoes. You bought the same shoes, same model, same everything because you liked them, bought 5 pair of them. And all of a sudden, hey, you now need to wear a size 15 instead of the 13 that you wear because somebody decided it was easier just to sew labels in there.
You already got my like once, so now that means the algorithm is going to continue to feed you my pictures over and over again.
So it's just like the only thing you can really do is worry about yourself individually and try to do the best you can. But at the end of the day, it's kind of hard to pay for $6 eggs. I think if enough people start complaining about it and it gets out there and sort of the stink gets applied to a company, they start to back off a little bit.
Oh, yeah, I just saw it right before we started recording. Apparently an investigation will come underway.
Yeah.
And I'm like...
Okay, good. Let's investigate some gas prices. Let's investigate some people who follow the money.
Yeah.
And do all that stuff. Because here's the deal. At the end of the day, if everybody could afford everything and things were reasonably priced and customer expectations where they need to be and consumer expectations were good and product provided was good, when has it ever been like that? So at the end of the day, it's never going to really happen the way anybody and everybody wants it because it's still a problem of scale.
So there's moments where it's been close.
For you.
It'll never be perfect.
Right.
But there's been moments of social contentment. But during those times, there's been other great distractions. That's what I'm going to call them, great distractions.
Yeah.
Such as social turmoil, or great atrocities. And I'm using those very political PC words there. So we were distracted by how okay things were. We weren't paying attention to how okay things were because there was this other great distraction, whether it was, racial unrest or a UFO flap or,
There's always something.
And
except for now, it seems like pick your poison. There's 1,000 things to worry about.
There's 1,000 things wrong.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's real easy. Okay, so there's like 1 million fires out there, right? And it's hard for you to worry about somebody else's fire when your own ass is on fire, right?
I got 99 problems and the media is all of them.
That's right. So I think that I don't know. It's a thing where you really got to be careful what you believe in and everything else. But I just know that it just seems like there's just too much junk going on for all of this to be an occurrence that has occurred. I don't want to say naturally or organically, but it just seems like there's a whole lot of stuff going on that shouldn't be going on.
Yeah.
So who knows? Anyway, I think we're done.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking. So yeah. Anyway, appreciate you listening to the podcast.
This one's a little different than what we normally do.
Yeah. It's probably trash, but either way, I feel better about myself. Yeah. Talked about it. Next time we'll talk about some other stuff that we find in the news. Like things like, guess what? Loch Ness Monster isn't an eel. We all knew that.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Maybe
some UFO stuff. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about all sorts of things. We have lots of stuff that we can talk about.
Maybe some.
And who knows what's going to happen?
Missing people.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Maybe. Who knows? Anyway, appreciate you taking the time to listen to the old CreepGeeks podcast. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, let us know.
Yep.
Very nice.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Be sure to check us out on social media. We're all over Facebook groups, TikTok, Instagram. You have it. Yeah. Let us know how we did.
Yes, 5 stars. 5 stars. All right. Anyway, so see you later. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Bye.